and technology must be harmonized with a shared commitment to justice, compassion, and the protection of human dignity. Justice must actually be the first guiding principle in our approach to technology, ensuring that it serves to uplift and unify humanity rather than to divide and harm. When we prioritize justice, we commit to using technology in ways that protect the vulnerable, promote equality, and foster global solidarity. Unity is another critical principle that must guide our technological endeavors. In a world that is increasingly interconnected, the decisions we make in one part of the world can have profound impacts on communities far beyond our borders. Therefore, we must ensure that technology contributes to the common good, fostering cooperation and mutual support across all nations and cultures. Indeed, we are at a decisive moment in history where humanity faces a stark choice. Either we cling to outdated behaviors, risking unimaginable horrors before we finally find peace, or we rise together now with a united will to embrace peace before it's too late. The problems we face are no longer isolated. They are global, affecting every one of us. And ignoring the growing tide of conflict and chaos would be a failure of responsibility. Today, I invite us all to reflect on some critical questions. How can we as faith communities go beyond merely supporting treaties and UN resolutions? How can we actively contribute to the creation of a robust international, moral, and ethical framework that will guide our discussions and decisions on technological advancements? In a world where technology is rapidly shaping every aspect of our lives, it is more crucial than ever that we stand together to ensure these developments are aligned with our deepest values, values to protect human dignity, promote justice, and foster global unity. How can we harness the collective wisdom of our diverse traditions to build this framework? How can we ensure that the ethical principles we hold dear are at the very heart of a global dialogue and technology, guiding humanity toward a future where innovation serves the greater good rather than undermining it? These are the challenges before us, and the answers we seek will define not just the future of technological progress, but the future of our global community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was an excellent way to start our event, and I think you've given us plenty of, you've given us more questions than answers, but I think that's very much appreciated. This is meant to be a dialogue and a discussion, so I really appreciate the questions that you've posed, and I hope later on that we'll be having some suggestions and answers and responses to that from the floor. So thank you very much, Simin. I know that Simin is not able to stay with us for the whole time, as she's got such a busy agenda, but we really appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks. Our next speaker is Raza Shah Khan, who is a peace and disarmament activist and is the chief executive of Sustainable Peace and Development Organization, a peace-oriented civil society organization based in Pakistan. And he'll be speaking to us as a Muslim, as well as a peace activist. He has been extensively engaged in the discussions at the CCW and other regional and international conferences on autonomous weapons. SPADO has convened many seminars, workshops, and regional meetings on autonomous weapons, especially engaging faith leaders. He'll be discussing why the interfaith perspective is important in addressing the issue of autonomous weapons and for protecting our shared humanity. Raza, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your introduction, and it's a privilege to share my views in front of the August delegates. As you have mentioned, Sustainable Peace and Development Organization, SPADO, has been working with different faith leaders in Pakistan and in the region that included the Christian faith leaders, the Hindu faith leaders, and the Muslim faith leaders. So we have been hosting such dialogues with them to get their perspectives on the issue of autonomous weapon systems. And at the same time, as a member of the campaign to stop killer robots, so we have been observing and participating in the discussion during the group of governmental experts and other regional and international meetings. So keeping in view the work which we have done, especially with the faith leaders, I will be more focusing on the concept of our shared humanity. And I hope we all will agree that irrespective of our beliefs and religions, humanity is the fundamental norm of all religions. And the value of life is priceless. Uh, the autonomous weapon systems can't understand the value of life, and that the human dignity, especially in a very complex conflict environment. There is a clear mention of, understanding of non-combatant impunity and, proportionality in Islamic teachings. Like there are a variety of Quranic verses, and same is true in other religious books and texts that an enemy should be punished in a proper way according to the crime or excesses he or she has committed. But how come autonomous weapon will judge that complex conflict environment in which they will operate? Like, for example, if we, as far as our understanding is concerned, that autonomous weapon systems will operate without any meaningful human control. So once they are deployed or they are activated, the environment at the battlefield can change. The combatants can surrender. So who will decide that, and who will actually really understand their complex conflict dynamics? So these are the questions which my previous colleague has already asked, and same is the case as the faith leaders and we as a peace organization believe is the question of human judgment. We have been observing these discussions mostly in the GGE related to, when you deploy autonomous weapon systems, so there should be that element of human judgment. But as humans, God has given us characteristics of, this collective wisdom, which my previous colleague has already mentioned. So it should also be, we should also be capable of judging the future. Like, it should not be just focusing on the current circumstances of autonomous weapon systems, but it should be more focused on if these autonomous weapons are deployed, used, and we have seen the autonomy in weapon systems are increasingly being used in conflicts in Gaza, in Ukraine, and in other ongoing conflicts. So what would be the proliferation look like? And it will be so difficult to control that proliferation that would be beyond, I think, the capability of states. One such example I can tell you is that most of the states are seeing these issues broadly in the military domain. These are not that conventional weapon which we have seen, like landmines, cluster munitions, and even nuclear weapons. These are emerging technologies, so that need like a system which can be developed by artificial intelligence experts, by IT experts, and their systems can be built in any kind of weapon, whether that could be an anti-personnel autonomous weapon system or that could be like a large aircraft or missile technology. So I humbly request states to also consider the use and the manufacturing of these weapons beyond the domain of the military, like non-state actors can have access to such weapons. So these are the concerns which the faith leaders have shared, and one of the important aspects is that the urgency is something which is very much important to us. As my colleague has already mentioned, is that the world has become so polarized. There is a great lack of trust and misunderstanding between states. And we are seeing that when even states define the characteristics of autonomous weapon systems, like for the last 11 years, we have been seeing the discussions going on in the GGE, but there are no concrete outcomes. And still, states are defining the characteristics and definition of autonomous weapon systems. So the faith leaders believe that time is the essence of such discussions, and states should work together, build consensus, and build trust towards a legally binding instrument on autonomous weapon systems. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raza. And we've had some conversations over the last few days, and you've talked a bit about the work that you've been doing in Pakistan, and it's really been encouraging to hear of the interfaith conversations that are going on in that context, and also your comment about that you have in the Islamic teachings that the enemy should be punished in a way commensurate with the crime. And I think that's probably a principle that cuts across all faith beliefs, that the punishment should fit the crime, and how can a machine ever make that decision? So thank you for the reminder of that. Thanks. So our next speaker to my left is Reverend Koladi Fadahunsi, who is an ordained Methodist minister in the Methodist Church, Nigeria, Director of the Institute of Church and Society in Ibadan, Nigeria, and is a member of the Commission of the Churches on International Affairs of the World Council of Churches. He's a human rights and disarmament activist. He advocates with religious leaders, youth, and governments on a wide range of issues. He's carried out several workshops around Nigeria on the threats posed by killer robots in recent years, and he'll be speaking to us about this work and the concerns with regards to killer robots from the perspective of Protestant Christianity. Koladi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I think it's working fine. I consider this a very great privilege and opportunity for me to speak to you and also to share our thoughts together on an issue that ordinarily we're supposed not to actually be discussing, because it's actually an issue of life and death, human versus human. So when it comes to issues like this, it's supposed to be a question of what is right and what is wrong, not justification for what is wrong, trying to paint it to become what is right. So it is a question of how do we respond to the strong always continuing to suppress the weak. So this is the issue for me. So listening to conversations and discussions across the room, I always want to believe that we should ordinarily sit together and say, we are all humans together, and we know when we are doing injustice or oppressing one another, we should stop it. So over the years, for the past 4 years, the World Council of Churches, with the support of the Stop campaign, the campaign to stop the robot, has actually supported us in engaging and also to collaborate in order to create awareness among the public in our own space to work on the possibility of prohibiting and also to regulate the existence of laws, as well as reach out to our faith organizations and platforms to look at the ethical responsibility that we profess in our faith to support this noble cause. I would like also to say that over 100 years ago, specifically on the 25th of January in the year 1921, a new word was invented, and that is robots. On that day, a Czech play was staged, which is named RUR, and that play was written by Karl Capek. The play initially stood for Resume Universal Robots. The robots in RUR were not so much machines as a sort of cloned human beings. The play was a plot, is a simple one, that the robots rebel against their creators. I want you to underline the word, the robots rebels against their creators with their consequences for humanity. So coming forward from that, Pope Francis also talks about artificial intelligence, which is an uprising that will become impossible to control, even according to the warnings of experts. So when we have this warning coming from a team of international scientists charged with designing a theoretical containment algorithm to ensure that any superintelligence system will not be able to harm people, it was hoped that no matter what the circumstances are, a simultaneous form of AI could be used to block any AI attacks on humanity. However, analysis of these checks led scientists to the conclusion that the current algorithms are unable to halt the threat posed by superintelligent artificial intelligence. So this is because in so doing, the system designed to halt AI will inadvertently also switch itself off and thus cease to operate. So if we have this background, then we should put it that artificial intelligence at a certain level be stopped by other artificial intelligence, let alone human intelligence. Coming forward to January 2018, the gathering at Davos had the following warnings about the threat posed by artificial intelligence. It says that robotics and other technological innovations must be so employed that they contribute to the service of humanity and to the protection of our common home, rather than to the contrary, as some assessment unfortunately foresee. So, and then further, Pope specifically asked Christians, that is us Christians, that Protestant, Christian Orthodox, or whatever, to pray that artificial intelligence will be used for the benefit of mankind and not to its detriment. He said, let us pray that the progress of robotic and artificial intelligence may always serve humankind. We could say, may it be human. It seems strange that on the first hearing, such a prayer request should be emanating from Rome. Now, we have to collectively look at human freedom, which is also always a cherished love. For this is a responsibility given by God. So if we allow any form of intentional killing of human being, this is a violation of human dignity. One of the recommendations and the commandments in our book, that is the Holy Bible, in Exodus 20, is you should not kill. And that is Exodus verse 20, chapter 20, verse 13, and which is the sixth commandment. It forbids direct and intentional killing as grave, a very grave sin. So the murderer, and those who cooperate voluntarily in murder commit a sin that cries out to heaven for vengeance. So if machine kills without any human control, whether meaningfully or not, who is responsible to carry this sin? We cannot watch and allow artificial intelligence to be weaponized into a global threat. It must not be allowed to decide, that is machine to decide who lives or who dies. As people of faith, it will be a disservice if you cannot protect humanity by prohibiting alternate weapon systems. We maintain the fact that human control plays a critical role, while meaningful human control must be enhanced, because alternative weapons can never respect international human rights law, which says you should not kill, which is the primary one. So we look at this as a concern for us as people of faith, and we decided to say it is time for us to rise and take action, and also to create another narrative, changing it from mere talk, and like I said in my introductory part, that we looked at it that we must stand beside those who are vulnerable to make sure that we prove a voice that will help them out of this logjam. So we have, over the years, designed our strategy of engagement. We start from meetings, our leaders, the committees of the Council of Churches together in Nigeria, to look at the possibility of first explaining and also creating the picture of why it is important for us to uphold the commandment that says you should not kill, and making sure that they understand what is it by when we say we have to stop killer robots, is it in the system or not, and the need for their respective church denominations to also subscribe to a collective way of response by way of making their voices and recommendations known to government. So that backs our intervention in one way. So we also sought for leaders for clear understanding of when African artificial intelligence can become weaponized, especially in the face of no regulations, because of the crave for technology and science, and the crave for wanting to always put an adventure before a decision. So, for example, in the northern part of Nigeria, church organizations ask questions and says that how are we sure that our experiences from the proliferation of small arms will not be repeated if this is actually come to play? So it talks about saying that life will become more cheaper and meaningless with this kind of weapons and technologies. And this is one of the things that was clearly expressed by churches in Nigeria, especially the churches in the northern part of the country. and also to say that now it is time for us to galvanize action by leading our government to be more proactive and to let you know that basically Nigeria was a signatory as a signatory to the CCW, so it makes it more very open to engagement and also to collaborations. So we use various means of making this message, from media awareness to IEC to open meetings to engage young people who are very prone and also very at home with social media to make the message spread all across the country. So for us as faith people, we want to also look at why it is important. So by nature of design and operation of these weapons, that is alternative weapon systems, and Christians in Nigeria and also in West Africa, to be more broad, are afraid that selective use of this could actually lead to selective justice or extermination of a particular faith. And that is not only in Nigeria. We can also see what is playing on now between Israel and Palestine, that if this is allowed to skate through, then it is going to be more easier for selective judgment in the position of usage, and that is not acceptable to us as people of faith by saying, God has said that you should not kill, and that is, you should not kill. That is a command which must be respected and which all must work on. So for us, this is not a question of further debate. We want action, and we want it to be done because we have to obey the instruction given by God. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaladi. Thank you for that rather very sobering reminder that, of course, we have concerns that if these weapons are brought to full fruition, then certain groups, faith-based groups, groups of particular ethnicities, races could be targeted through the different profiling that could be built into these weapons. So thank you for that reminder, and also for bringing up this issue of accountability. If these weapons do kill, who is held accountable? And it's a question that we don't really have answers for at the moment. Thank you. So our final panelist, who is going to be joining us online, if the technology is working, and I believe it is Hayley Ramsey-Jones, who represents Sokagai International, which is a global community-based Buddhist organization. She's the Geneva director of the SGI Office for UN Affairs in Switzerland. She manages climate justice, disarmament, human rights education, and youth engagement programs, and is responsible for advocacy work at the UN on disarmament issues. Taking an intersectional approach, Hayley highlights the human rights and social justice perspectives in disarmament and has worked with Stop Killer Robots campaign to help draw attention to algorithmic bias and digital dehumanization more broadly. Hayley, are you with us? If you are, you have the floor.
I am. Can you hear me?
Wonderful.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for the invitation. Really want to first acknowledge the organisers for putting this on and for asking me to speak, inviting me to speak, but also for facilitating my remote participation. So I thank you all for that. So as you've heard, my name is Hayley Ramsey-Jones, and I work for Sokagai International Office for UN Affairs. I'm also a practicing Buddhist. And as such, and just by virtue of being a human being, deeply concerned about the trajectory of increasing autonomy within weapon systems. And my organization is so too. So there are many reasons for this concern, but essentially it boils down to the fact that humanity is surrendering the decision over life and death to a machine, which of course, if we do that, it completely sanitizes the act of killing and lowers the threshold for the use of force. It undermines the principles of human autonomy, responsibility, accountability, and dignity. And we've heard a lot about that already, as well as the basic right to life. And given that autonomous weapon systems are being designed to target and kill based on data inputs and pre-programmed algorithms, we are extremely concerned about algorithmic bias and discriminatory impact. And not only do we think that autonomous weapons systems will exacerbate already existing inequalities, but that they will also pose a lethal consequence to marginalized groups. So fundamentally, we work on this issue because at the heart of it, we think it's the radical negation of others, of their humanity, and of their equal right to happiness in life. And as a global association of Buddhists committed to upholding the ultimate respect for the life of oneself and others, and with the rapid pace of change in emerging technologies and their serious implications for humanity's future, we feel compelled to take a strong stance against autonomous weapon systems. And we think it's vitally important that as different religious communities and traditions, that we all speak up against autonomous weapon systems and clearly make the case of why they are an urgent threat. And this work not only needs to be done externally, and I think we're doing that now with meetings such as this, but there's also a lot of work that I think we can all do internally. There are millions, billions of people around the world that hold dear a religious tradition. And if we are able to sensitize our own religious communities, our collective impact could be hugely significant. So I think for that, we need to look within our own religious traditions and articulate why this issue is relevant. And in the case of my own practice, a really important concept in Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism is the concept of interconnectedness of life, and the idea that no one issue, person, or thing exists in a vacuum, and that fundamentally you cannot build your happiness on someone else's suffering. And in this way, Buddhism is concerned with equality, justice, and human security. So working to unmask systems of oppression that deny people's dignity is inherent in our philosophy. And of course, this is also relevant to many other religions too. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to look at the language we use and to make those links with this urgent issue. And then I think what we've been trying to do is to look at how concretely we can work on this. And so for SGI, we joined a Stop Killer Robots campaign at the beginning of 2019. We always argue about this, it's either the end of 2018 or the beginning of 2019. Either way, we've been members of the campaign for a little while now, and together with other civil society groups, we've been calling for new legally binding legislation to regulate autonomy in weapon systems. And we've also been, as in my introduction, applying an anti-racist intersectional approach in our disarmament work by highlighting the different ways that weapon systems themselves have been developed, tested, and used at the detriment often of people of colour and marginalised communities. So in this particular area of work, we've been working with the Special Rapporteur on Racism and also with the working group of experts of people of African descent to try and get them to include issues around how different weapon systems perpetuate racial inequalities within their thematic reports, and that are, of course, submitted to the UN General Assembly, but also to the Human Rights Council. We've worked with Stop Killer Robots campaign on their digital dehumanization campaign, which positions autonomous weapon systems in a wider framework of digital dehumanization. And this talks about the real life dangers of reducing human beings to near data points, and also to kind of commoditize them and make them into products to be monetized, and the dangers of that. So this campaign, we've spoken to artists, academics, campaigners, as well as others on a wide range of matters, including surveillance, protest, health, education, housing, law enforcement, and military. And though we desperately need regulation, we don't think regulation alone will be sufficient. So we need public opinion, of course, to help shape the debate in support of regulation on autonomous weapons. So for this, we've tried to work a lot on awareness raising initiatives for the general public. We've supported Stop Killer Robots with their film on autonomous weapons titled Immoral Code, which was launched in London, I believe, in 2021. And we've since held quite a few screenings in different parts of the world to help raise awareness of the issue amongst our own Buddhist community. And we've partnered with Stop Killer Robots and Amnesty International to create an interactive and multidisciplinary exhibition titled Automated by Design, and this was launched in New York last year at the General Assembly First Committee. And this year was at the Vienna Conference on Autonomous Weapon Systems, and we're working with our partners and our Buddhist communities around the world so that as many people as possible can view that. It's also, the exhibition has also been made available online to help increase its accessibility, and we're working on different translations for the hard copy as well. In terms of our advocacy work, we've really tried to work with states who, well, all states have a stake in this issue, but we've been trying to work with the Caribbean community specifically. Last year we worked with CARICOM community, CARICOM Impacts, Trinidad and Tobago, and Stop Killer Robots to organise the regional conference on autonomous weapons in Trinidad and Tobago. It was a 2-day conference that concluded in states adopting the CARICOM Declaration on Autonomous Weapon Systems, and this historic declaration outlined their commitment to collaborate on endeavours for an international legally binding instrument on autonomous weapon systems. And as well as this, as Jennifer outlined at the beginning in her remarks, is that we are working alongside other faith traditions in sort of issuing and supporting joint interfaith statements that outline our collective grave concern about this issue and calling for new legal instruments to regulate autonomy and weapon systems. So I think we're in agreement this issue is of urgent significance. We need to acknowledge that what we're living in now is a hugely important moment. We're quite literally at a crossroad, and the speed in which AI and weapon systems are developing along with their autonomous functions requires nothing less than urgent action and commitment. Unfortunately, what we've witnessed and have been witnessing at the GGE is that it's not capable of addressing the challenges we face in a timely manner, and that this stagnated pace is so incredibly dangerous. We must move past it. We must start negotiations on a legally binding instrument that contain both prohibitions and positive obligations, and we need to do that in a forum that is inclusive and is able to consider all the issues with autonomous weapon systems holistically and comprehensively, and where progress cannot be blocked. There are so many problems in our world today that are complex and intractable: poverty, hunger, social injustice, climate change, gun control, nuclear weapons, to name but a few. It is crazy to add autonomous weapon systems to that list, and we have an opportunity now to stop the development of these weapons and to free ourselves of having to spend the next decades, centuries trying to roll this back. We have the possibility and the responsibility to act now to literally save numerous lives. And so we should decide how we want to use technology, knowledge, and the world's resources. And this is why religious organizations, in our view, cannot afford to stay silent. We have all got a stake in this, and we are uniquely positioned to help humanity grapple with the ethical and moral dilemmas that autonomous weapon systems pose, and to help ignite empathy and creative ways forward. Regardless of religion, this issue has, we believe, the potential to unite us all in living up to our loftiest values. So I will leave with that, and I look forward to any questions or anything. Thank you so much once again.
Much, Hayley. I think I've heard several challenges in what you've said. I think the challenge for faith actors to, as you pointed out, millions around the world. It's probably billions around the world that do hold a religious faith, and it's time that we didn't stay silent and that we speak up and would have a large voice if we could all speak out and change public opinion. And I also heard the challenge to the GGE that you're moving at a very stagnated and even dangerous pace. So we need to find ways to pick that up. Thank you very much, Hayley. So it's almost time for comments and questions from the floor, but I would like first to use my moderator's privilege to give the floor to Ilias Katona, who is a youth activist with the Hungarian activist network of the Stop Killer Robots campaign, who's been working with Catholic and other youth in his country to raise awareness about killer robots. He'll give us some perspectives from a youth voice. Thank you, Ilias.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here and speak in front of you. Let me start with a quote from St. John Paul II. There will be peace only to the extent that humanity as a whole rediscovers its fundamental calling to be one family, a family in which the dignity and rights of individuals are accepted as prior and superior to any kind of difference or distinction. So, our engagement in Hungary with Christian communities begin with the International Eucharistic Congress organized by the Roman Catholic Church in Budapest in 2021. And we have discussed this issue with numerous clerics and also believers. And since then, we started to monitor more closely, especially the Catholic Church's teachings and Christian social teachings in general, about artificial intelligence, and we translated documents. We consulted with the Hungarian Jesuit order, and this is just the beginning of a road that we started because we see that the Christian perspective is very important in our work. Why do I say this? Because I think my view is that when humanity and political decision makers come to existential questions, such as how much controls can machines have, I think the anthropology, the view of the human person that they choose, is of fundamental importance. I want to highlight just a few points. Some of them were already mentioned about how Christianity views the human person and why this is important in our discussion. How we see things, I personally come from a Protestant background, but what I think connects most Christians is viewing the human person being created at the image and likeness of God. And three things flow from this. First, the human person is more than the physical presence. They have a soul and an incalculable value. There have been many references, and I think it's a common point in other religions as well, giving a transcendent significance of human life, arguing for the value of human life beyond humans themselves. And I think it's very important. But also, this image makes us able to choose the freedom that has also been referred to do right or wrong, and to make choices and take responsibility for those choices. And third, we have a unique ability and, in fact, obligation to show love, to show selfless care, charity, and mercy towards each other. And on a social level, this is highlighted in the principle of solidarity. So what flows from this is a sanctity of human life and the principle of human dignity, human agency and responsibility, and solidarity between different communities, be it a small community, a nation, or the entirety of humanity. Autonomous weapons, their mass production and use, turn these things upside down. First, if deciding over life and death lacks human judgment, and algorithms who reduce us to those data which they see from our physical appearance or the data that they gather from our devices, that means that the decision over our lives is an automatic response, and it doesn't come from a living person. This devaluates life, in my opinion, and disregards human dignity. Also, distancing humans and delegating responsibility to machines to kill means escaping from our options to choose right and wrong, from our options to take responsibility, our obligation to live with our freedom that we got by nature. This means that wars are dehumanizing, and we are releasing human agency from our own hands. And third, we are taking away the opportunity to show mercy on a very small scale. Soldiers cannot show mercy to each other if the robot is shooting the human. But we are also diminishing solidarity within humanity. We have to understand that even when wars occur and nations want to defend themselves, we have a natural instinct, a sort of conscience towards peace. And we can make that a part of discussions, and we can make that a part of the war process, and we can direct war towards peace. But if machines are making the decisions during the war, this instinct, this human element is left out of the processes, and wars are not ultimately directed at peace, but only at more wars. So what is currently happening, in my opinion, with the autonomous weapons developments and the lack of setting certain frameworks and controls are contrary to the Christian view of the human person, and those in positions have to understand the sanctity of human life, human dignity, the principle of solidarity, and human responsibility, and they have to ensure that meaningful human control prevails over the use of force in order for our existential decisions to be made right and based on the right image of the human person. This is what we are fighting for, and this is what we're going to represent, to continue to represent in the upcoming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gilles. Yeah, so as you've mentioned, love and mercy, two essential components of our decision-making process, which I think we can agree will never be able to be programmed into robots. They will never have such capabilities. So that's the end of our speakers. We would very much like to open the floor for comments, for questions. Please, when speaking, give us your name and your organization. I see the lady there.
Alev Mine of the One Goal Initiative for Governance. We live at very dangerous, critical times because people see population size as a problem for climate change. So if people think of reducing population, why not reduce the population of the other instead of oneself, right? So we're living at a time where people are thinking about killing each other. Therefore, not only robots or automated killing is a problem, I think non-automated killing is also a problem right now. And there is, even the word dignity can be used to kill in saying that, people need to die with dignity. They should have the right to choose to die, let's make their lives miserable and then give them the choice to die, And this is also a time where there's a hollowing of governments. Private sector is investors are taking over a lot of the authority, resources, operational capabilities, etc. And in that direction, if we evolve in that direction, what are we going to arrive at? We're going to arrive at a situation where sufficient productivity will be the only measure to the right to live. So this is not where we want to get to. I think it is very unwise from the people who believe that they will be safe to pursue that path, because nobody can be sufficiently productive all the time, and that's going to permeate everywhere. And then the discussions here are sometimes I feel like asking them, what are we talking about? Because reliability is not there. Explainability is not there. Human control is not realistically feasible. Yes, this is something that leads to, I mean, the thing that we always can fall back on is indeed, you know, thou shalt not kill. That is something that we want to pursue. And last thing I wanted to say is that we are also at a time where religions in general are being smashed, are being attacked, is discredited. And maybe you want to say something about that. Thank you.
Take a couple of more comments and questions, and then if the panelists would like to respond. Usman, I see.
Thank you, Jennifer. Firstly, so pleased to see this event happen. I've been working on the issues of killer robots for several years, and I believe that the faith perspective has been fundamentally lacking in the GGE discussions, and I'm very grateful that you have brought it in. But I have a significant criticism to make, and I mean this knowing the people on the panel as friends, and I believe that this was perhaps an oversight, but I invite the panel to address all of the matters that you have been raising, all of the concerns, principles around faith, around dignity, around oneness, around solidarity, is not just one for principle, but one for action. And we know that all of the systems that have been discussed here, the most severe forms of them are being used right now. And it's not just me that is saying this. I want to quote from the UN Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Forms of Racism. On the 3rd of June, the UN Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Forms of Racism reported that Israel's use of autonomous weapon systems includes the use of remote-controlled quadcopters to target Palestinians, in addition to automated target generation systems operating at unparalleled speed and volume to produce kill lists. The Gospel, named after the Bible, is an artificial intelligence technology system used by the Israeli occupation forces, are reported to have intensified the levels of destruction in Gaza, resulting in significant casualties, in particular amongst Palestinian women and children. All of the concerns that have been raised are happening right now, and I've been disappointed to hear how insufficiently it's been addressed by the panel. Given that the gospel is named after the Bible, given that much of the violence that we are seeing is being done in the name of religion, given the extent to which the charisma of your offices demands an appropriate response to the levels of violence and the levels of automated use of technology is being used to commit genocide. I think this needs to be addressed at a faith event on autonomous weapon systems. Thank you.
Is there another comment or question before we invite the panelists to respond? Okay, not at this moment. Okay, who would like to go first? Okay.
Thank you very much. I think to the first question or contribution, I pick something I really want to say that even if corporations take over, corporations and multinationals actually operate under state laws and control of government. So it is the responsibility of government to actually take decision and not to surrender their powers of determination to multinationals. Yes, they do business and they pay taxes, but they do such activities under laws and regulations of government that are legitimately instituted to govern and to rule spaces. They are located with themselves or they shared among themselves. So I think that is why it is still important for us to always hold government and government accountable for this decision. So we cannot say because corporations are doing business or multinationals doing business have taken over, then we surrender to faith. Yeah. And to Usman, I think this is time for us to push more for sincerity of purpose and timely response if our humanity must continue to be shared. So if we operate here as humans and living on this planet Earth together, then we should be more sincere to ourselves. Like I said, when something's wrong, we should be able to define it as wrong and not use the word like maybe he has a reason for doing that enough. So I really want to agree with you that we should actually, on the basis of faith, our belief and traditions, be a brother's keeper and also journey together as one entity created by God. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to just quickly comment on, that yes, we agree that the true essence of religion have been hijacked, and the true philosophy of peace, nonviolence, and mutual coexistence. So just wanted to say that yes, I agree that all religions believe in peace, mutual coexistence, and harmony. But these are the people who have their vested interests and how they propagate their vested interests. Coming to the question of like the comments of Usman, I mentioned urgency in my comments, and I also mentioned the growing autonomy in the weapon system, especially being used in Gaza and even in Ukraine. So my own personal opinion and understanding is that if states consider like autonomous weapon system as a military advantage at the current level, they should at least think what will happen if that military advantage is no more. To me, like we should broadly see the current situation, not into the current situation, but more broadly in what will happen in future. And we are seeing that in Gaza. I agree with you that if you look at the casualties, they are mostly civilians, children, and women. And secondly is that I mentioned that the polarization of the world and this lack of trust. So if we look at the history, like even Second World War and even before that, those who are allies, those who were enemies are now allies. So circumstances and alliances changes very frequently, but the destruction to humanity will not repair. So I believe is that now is the time, and we can just, as a civil society, peace organization, request, state organizations and state representatives attending the GGE to really understand the urgency of this issue and to come to a concrete steps and, very concrete steps that leads to prohibitions and regulations on autonomous weapon systems. And at least they can have a moratorium on autonomous weapon systems. So they have to realize that the time is passing very quickly, and then it will be too late to address this issue if it is not addressed now. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a little bit of time if there are more questions? I see Verity, I think it's at the back, is it? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to the panel. Verity Coyle from Amnesty International. And I'm thinking about other disarmament processes where we've seen the impact that the World Council of Churches and faith leaders from around the world have been able to have. And when we were negotiating the arms trade treaty, I remember clearly that religious leaders specifically spoke about the need to include ammunition in the scope of the treaty. And that was unfortunately something we weren't able to get in the final text, not treated in the same way as the rest of the weapons. But it was a consistent and considered campaign that really spoke to a particular element of the new international law we were trying to create together. And I wonder when we speak about autonomous weapons, if that is something, again, that the World Council of Churches and faith leaders could think about. And the one that comes to mind in this instance is, at the moment, many governments are refusing to look at a prohibition on ores that target people. And it seems to me from everything our panelists have said that that could be a really excellent line of inquiry and thought for leaders of various religions to take to their governments, and one that communities of all faiths would understand at a core level. So I guess this is a bit of a plea, and I'm sure there are other ideas that could be taken forward. But when religious leaders come together and speak on these issues, it has a different level of cut through than organisations such as mine. And it takes all of these elements for us to be able to create these pieces of law that really do change lives and do change the world that we live in. So thank you so much for the panel. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether that or another aspect could be something that you really prioritise moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Verity. And I think is it Tanya? Yes.
So much. Thanks, Jennifer, and everyone on the panel. I wanted to pick up on Osman's point, which of course is totally relevant. And I think, I mean, looking around the room, most of us in this room are humanitarian advocates. I think there are a couple of state representatives. There are a number of conflicts going on in the world, a number of genocides. AI, weapons technology, and algorithm use in Sudan and others. And when we were in a side event yesterday on legal review, as a number of us are aware, the way a lot of the UN fora work are to very much silo and compartmentalize the way we legally code certain weapons technologies. And if we look at the way Article 5 supports Article 36, and the way we have tiers 1 and 2 in the current sort of favoured two-tier process here, there is a concerted effort, which the UK reiterated in their statement yesterday, I believe, to keep decision support systems out of the CCW's approach to autonomous weapon systems. And I would press, from our perspective as humanitarians, because even though the systems that are currently in use, certainly in Sudan, but also in Gaza, even though obviously the data are overwhelmed, the kill lists, the speed at which they're used, there's a use of autonomy that is unlawful and questionable. They're not autonomous weapons in the way that we talk about them. It's the decision support systems which enable a kind of lack of intervention, oversight, lack of distinction, and all of those things that we've been advocating are a concern. And that wider DSS, which is used in military support systems as a whole, are an increasing problem and enable a what we talk about digital dehumanization, but I quite like the term that's used in data academia, which is algorithmic exception, which is concerning. And I would advocate that all of us are more alert to pushing for DSS to be used if we manage to get this into the GA, where the weapon states that are have more control over or more influence over the CCW have less sway, where we have more room to expand the definitions of weapon systems. I think that's a significant point that we have to be aware of if we have more room there. Thank you. And I think in the context of this room, obviously, if it wasn't implied to be explicit, I think faith leaders are going to have a significant role there, to pick up on Verity's point.
Thank you very much. Would either of the panelists, or Hayley, if you're listening, would either of you, the three of you, like to respond to those last comments?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think one thing that I would like to say as final comment is basically to make my point, which has been my personal, based on past experiences, opinion, is that all these terminologies and big terms confuse religious people, leaders. We need languages that are very simple. Languages that, okay, don't kill your brother, don't kill your sister, don't kill humankind, then why do you want to kill? Why do you invest so much energy and resources to build the machines and to develop systems that will kill others? Where is love? Where is empathy? Where is shared humanity? Instead of big terminologies like all these big grammars will not help. So, like when we talk about targeting people, targeting humankind, is it greed? Is it out of greed or lust for power, control of spaces? How long are we going to continue to make ourselves Lord over one another? We're designed in the image of God equally. God created humankind in his own image, not in the images of machine. So if it is not the images of machine, then we should live with that. So I want us to think about that as we leave this place. Thank you.
Anything? You have another comment, or you're okay? Okay. No. Okay, and we don't have any further comment from Haley. So, are there any further comments from the floor? If not, I'll invite our panelists just to give a last word. No? Okay. Raza, would you like just to say a final word?
So first of all, thank you so much for hosting this event. My final comment would be, as I have mostly explained that, is that like the more there are a perception that the more precision is there in the weapon systems, the more there would be like there will be less sufferings and there will be less civilian casualties. But it is opposite to that. We have seen that the more like technology has advanced, like we have seen landmines, then cluster munitions, and then we have seen the drone attacks. Especially, I belong to a country where there were drones were extensively used in the tribal region adjoining Afghanistan. So there were frequent attacks on civilian populations, even peace gatherings, so that perception to me is quite wrong. That if you have more precision weapon, there will be like less human sufferings. So that there should be the more we are detaching human beings from the battlefield, it is becoming very difficult to understand the context of the conflict. Like a person sitting in a totally different environment, operating a system in an area which is far away from their particular space. So it is so difficult to basically judge the context of that conflict. So to me, autonomous weapon system would be devastating for our shared humanity. God has given us that it has been discussed mostly by my other colleagues that collective wisdom and that the wisdom to judge our future. So prevention is better than cure. So I think that the GGE and especially other forums should not delay the process of regulating and prohibiting autonomous weapon systems. Otherwise, it will be then too late. Thank you.
I'll give the floor next to Haley. Haley, would you like to say some closing words?
Hi, sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. And thank you for all of your questions. I mean, I think to speak to Verity's point, yes, I think it's really important that we need to, it can be very powerful to have like various different religious leaders all speaking out about this issue in terms of the treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons. Religious voices is actually in the preamble of that treaty, and we worked collectively to try and get that our voices recognized, and I think that was a very powerful thing. So we hope to continue that and to advance that in anything that's negotiated in for autonomous weapon systems, and I think targeting people is incredibly important area, and we will continue to do that. The president of our organization, like some others, have spoken out harshly about this issue, so we will continue to work on that. In terms of the genocide that we see happening now and around the world in various different places, yeah, I think it's incredibly important that religious communities and leaders speak up. And I think it's incredibly important that we all speak up. We all have a platform, and we have to find ways in making our platform as big as possible. And as I said in my remarks, I think religious communities and different religious traditions have a stake in this. To speak to the point around the first speaker who mentioned religions being discredited and hijacked and compromised. I think this is something that we also have to grapple with, how religions have been and various philosophies have been used to negatively and to stir up conflict and division. And I think that's internal work that we have to do, and that's why the interfaith initiatives on this issue and on other issues are incredibly powerful and important. So as Sokikaka International, we will continue to promote those initiatives, and as I said, working within our own platform and looking internally and how we can mobilize our own constituencies around sort of awareness raising and what we can each do to help move this forward and to get a treaty. I think we're over time, so I just want to thank you once again for the invitation, and I look forward to working with you all on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hayley, for making the time and joining us remotely. Final, very brief word from Kaladi to my left.
Thank you very much. I think the Holy Bible says that a time should come when we will convert our swords and weapons to plowshares to cultivate the field so that we can provide food for others. And the time is now for us to look into that direction. From my context of space in Africa, we have more problems than consuming what we do produce. So we are more resilient to resist alternative weapon systems so that we don't consume what we are not producing. Thank you.
And thank you to everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you.